Photoshop has an easy-to-use feature called Perspective Warp that allows you to change the perspective of an image. Unfortunately, it doesn't work with smart objects, so I'm just going to click the lock icon next to the layer to convert the background into a layer. Then I'll choose Edit and Perspective Warp. By default, you might see a little tooltip that pops up. You can just click in the little X in order to dismiss that. Now, the goal here is to define the perspective of the image. And although I'm not sure this building is actually correct, I might need to guess a little bit. I think we can get pretty close. So I'm going to click at the base of the image here where I see the perspective of the two different sides of the building, and I'll click and drag up. Now, in order to alter the perspective plane, I'll click on any of the endpoints and just use the lines in the perspective plane in order to try to match the perspective of the building. So I'm going to bring this down a bit so that it falls right along those windows, and this falls right about here. All right, I need to now draw out a second plane, so I'll just start in the left-hand side of my image, and as I drag close to the initial plane, you can see that it highlights. When I release the cursor, it will attach those two planes together. Then I'll adjust the plane on the left side, using, again, the ground for a reference point. I'll use the windows for a reference point here and just drag this down a bit. Now, I might need to drag the center part down just a little, maybe to about there, and maybe this up a bit more. So, like I said, if the building isn't exactly at right angles, you might just have to guess a little bit. But once you've drawn out your perspective planes, you can move from layout to warp. So I'll select warp, and if I was just trying to straighten the perspective of these lines, either the vertical or horizontal, I could click on the first icon for vertical and click on the second icon for horizontal. Now, I think that's rather an interesting effect, but not quite the effect I was after, so I'll click on Reset. If I want to manually adjust this, I can click on any of the pens and just drag to change the perspective of the image. Again, not exactly what I was after, so I'll use Command Z to undo that. And instead, I'll hold down the Shift key, and as I position my cursor over any of the perspective lines here, and I click on one of them, it tells Photoshop to restrict that line to either a horizontal or a vertical line. Now, when I click on the pen and make my adjustment, that line will remain vertical. So I'll just make a small adjustment, maybe bringing it down a little bit and to the left. Then I'll click the check mark in order to apply it. I'll use Command Z to do a little undo and then redo so we can see before and after. So there you are, an easy way to warp the perspective of an image in Photoshop, which can be incredibly useful when compositing multiple images into the same photograph.